Perth, Australia, and speak to Joe Siracusa, an author and Dean of Global Futures at Curtin University. Joe, thank you so much for your time. Can you just put the relationship between Washington and Ankara into context with regards to Antony Blinken's visit here?
Yes. Thank you for having me. Look, it's the Turkish-U.S. relationship is very important to the U.S. State Department and to the Defense Department. Turkey plays an important role in their thinking about the world. Just imagine here, Turkey is the only member of NATO that can pick up the phone and talk to President Putin. Turkey and President Erdogan established the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which is feeding millions and millions of people. And frankly, Blinken's looking for some help here. Now, he's come to give aid, could have done that through the U.S. aid people, but he's come also to shore up Turkish assistance for America's endgame with Ukraine. It's very important that President Erdogan and Ankara play an important role here. I've been saying over and over again on this show and in other places, the road to peace, the road to a diplomatic settlement runs straight through Ankara. Ankara is the only honest broker in the region that would have the trust and confidence of the Russian Federation and with the Western nations. No, so there's some bit of irony here. I mean, NATO is trying to throw F-16s at Ukraine in a war that they're never going to win. And they've been holding them back from the Turkish government for years now because over various complaints of this and that. So, there's a little bit of irony here. But look, the visit is not only to extend condolences and to give aid and assistance. It's also to make sure that Turkey and President Erdogan stay on course, because right now Secretary of State Blinken requires the assistance of Turkey and the president to stay in these initiatives. However important the day-to-day tasks are of the recovery, the United States of America and NATO will require Turkey's assistance to get out of this potential World War III situation with Ukraine. So it is critical.
Yeah, okay, so you're taking us down the diplomatic path. Let's continue with that before I just come back to the humanitarian assistance issue. The NATO Secretary General has also been in Turkey. NATO has promised to assist its NATO ally. And then we've got, obviously, the Incirlik air base that NATO uses. Does that mean that there are those issues of diplomacy, of security, of almost military-type assistance to Turkey at this delicate time? Because NATO is obviously not a government, it's a military and alliance of Western nations.
On the 50th anniversary of the ANZUS Treaty, I asked the admiral, the head of the American 7th Fleet, what does the Navy do? Does it protect people? What's its main role? And he said the main role is protection of its allies and humanitarian assistance. Now, at that time, there was the 2005, the terrible tsunami in Asia, where the American Navy came to the rescue of a lot of people. So the American armed forces are really prepared to assist nations in a military way, and they expect other nations to be thinking of these kinds of things. I mean, the military is not only designed to protect the homeland, it's also to protect the people at home. So when there's a disaster like this, the armed forces are called into being, and this is how Secretary of State Blinken sees this. He sees the relief and assistance of Turkey, of the earthquake, coming through military channels, because the military are the only people in the society who have the capability and the experience to run this material through and get it to the zone. So and keep in mind that American earthquake diplomacy is part of America's national security interests, which is fully covered by American foreign policy. So, he's not here just for the hell of it. He's here because it's important for American interests, and it's important for Turkey to see that America is there when it needs it. So, there's a whole lot of things being served. You can call it earthquake diplomacy, but it covers all the bases.
Yeah, and how much concern do you think there might be in Washington and amongst other NATO allies about possibly security breaches along the border between Turkey and Syria? The Turkish government has tried to repeatedly assure its citizens that they are doing everything they can to make sure that no Daesh operatives take advantage of the security situation and try to enter Turkey. And there must be many European nations also hoping that that's the case, that those Daesh operatives don't come through Turkey into their territory.
Well, you're right to point it out. It's an important feature Where terrorists go and where they roam and where they end up is very, very important, particularly to nations that are at war with them. So I imagine that it's on the short list of things to talk about, and I'm sure that Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin have said what they can do, or have talked what they can do to make sure this doesn't happen. But terrorists slipping across lines in times of disaster, this is not new. This is what they do. They try to take advantage of this kind of situation that is disasters. But I'm sure it's very high on the agenda, and I'm sure they're thinking about it, because we don't need terrorist attacks on top of a natural catastrophe like this. So I'm sure they're thinking about it very carefully.
And do you think that they're imagining that this is going to be a long-term project of assistance?
Yes, sir. The USAID agency, which I think has a budget of about $18 billion, helps people for the short term and the long term. There is no one in the world who would imagine that the earthquake in Turkey is a short-term problem. It will take 5 to 10 years. It will recover. It will require builders to come in, or assistance for builders, infrastructure. In fact, I imagine the queue of contractors to rebuild these cities and to rebuild these homes must be forming, around the corner, because there'll be a lot of people who want to get involved in this. A lot of good companies that would want the contract. So there'd be a great interest in the international community to provide infrastructure and housing and all the rest of it, in addition to whatever can be absorbed by the Turkish contract industry itself.
Joe, thank you so much indeed. Really appreciate it. Joe Siracusa in Perth,
Okay,
Australia.
thank you.
Take care.